My emotions often present themselves as the absolute truth, and I bet you feel the same or you know this feeling. But spoiler alert, they're not real, they're not facts, they're just feelings. Let me explain what I mean. Imagine you're at a dinner party, you're surrounded by friends or friends, people you don't particularly know super well, and suddenly a wave of awkwardness washes over you. In that moment, your brain doesn't offer a logical diagnostic for those awkward feelings. Of course, it doesn't come up with an explanation like, I am currently experiencing a minor spike in social anxiety due to a lack of dopamine and a surplus of cortisol. No, that would be nice, but no. In those cringe moments, it convinces yourself of something else and whispers something like, everyone here thinks I'm a loser. It creates a fact out of a negative emotion. See, our emotions, they don't feel like suggestions or like vague hypotheses or maybes. Our thoughts seem to be immovable facts, or at least that's what it feels like. Think about waking up with that crushing sense of dread, like on some random Sundays when you just wake up in a weird mood. You don't tell yourself something like, oh, I guess my blood sugar is just a bit low right now and that's why I feel so weird. I think you would more likely tell yourself something like, oh no, I'm feeling so bad, my life is going nowhere, like already completely spiraling. In these moments, the feeling isn't a guess, it's like evidence, or your brain behaves like it's evidence. Or at least that's what your brain believes. So it feels as though the universe just pulled back a curtain to reveal a hidden ugly truth about reality. But honestly, we need to stop falling for this trick. Your brain often decides what is quote-unquote true based on how you feel first. And only afterward does it scramble to build the explanation to justify it. But your emotions aren't just reactions to the world. In reality, they are the architects of it. They create your reality in a way, so we really should learn to tame them or to redirect them. Because if you get carried away by every chemical flicker in your chest, you hand over your power to create a better reality. You let your emotions overpower you. So today I want to talk about the so-called interpreter in your head and of course the biological thing, so the biological glitch that lets your heart trick your mind. Because once you see the mechanism, once you understand that, you realize that being emotional about a situation doesn't make the situation more real in any way. Emotions are not facts, and we should treat them as messengers and not as the complete truth. So let's dive in. Imagine walking into a room. Two people are whispering. They glance at you for a split second and then look away. Suddenly, you feel that sharp, cold drop in your stomach. Something seems wrong. Within milliseconds, your brain starts working backward to explain to you and itself what's going on. It asks something like, okay, what must be true for me to feel this bad? The answers then flood in like a leak. Oh, they're judging my clothes, they think I'm super ugly, or they remember that embarrassing thing I said 3 years ago, something like that. Mostly negative things, to explain the negative feeling you are feeling right now, of course. Psychologists call this emotional reasoning. It's a cognitive distortion where we assume that because we feel a certain way, it must be the objective reality. So for example, I feel guilty right now, therefore I must have done something wrong, or I feel overwhelmed, therefore the life I want to live must be impossible. Normally, we like to think our thoughts cause our feelings, but often it's the other way around. The feeling arrives like a flash of lightning, and the fact is just the thunder that follows. So that's the basic of it all. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Modern neuroscience also tends to agree. Think of your emotions as a lens placed over your eyes, like a funky pair of glasses. When you're in a state of flow, a state of well-being or confidence, the world seems bright and everything feels and looks more beautiful. A stranger's neutral face then looks like a potential friend, and a challenge looks like a game. Okay, so everything is good. So you're in a good mood and the world smiles back at you, this kind of thing. But when that lens turns insecure, when the color changes, so to speak, the exact same world transforms. We enter a new reality, you could say. Everything you then see changes just because your feelings are different when you see those things. A delayed text message then doesn't mean they're busy, it's not important, but it means they're leaving me, they must hate me, they don't care about me, okay, stuff like that. So really negative. A quiet room, for example, seems lonely rather than peaceful and chill. But the thing also is, most of what we encounter in a day is fundamentally ambiguous. It has no built-in meaning because we are the ones that give the meaning to it. We are the ones that give meaning to situations, to sentences, to looks, to, I don't know, words. A boss saying, "we need to talk," is a neutral event until your emotional state decides if it's a promotion or a firing. We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are, to use this really corny cliche quote, but honestly it is true. Like most of the weird quotes. So everything is neutral until we give the thing, the situation, a meaning. And this meaning we give depends on our state of mind, our beliefs, and our feelings we carry day to day. To understand our feelings and this whole thing I just talked about, of course we have to take a look at our brain, at our supercomputer right in our head. So the human brain is, at its core, like a world-class storyteller that absolutely loathes being confused, okay? It doesn't like being confused. It operates on a simple evolutionary mandate. Uncertainty equals danger. Because obviously, from a survival perspective, like back in the days, incorrect explanation is infinitely better than no explanation at all. Because imagine our ancestors hearing a rustle in the tall grass when they were outside hunting or whatever they did, I don't know. Those people who paused to ponder the possibilities often didn't survive to pass on their genes. Our brains are wired to assume the rustle is a predator because a wrong explanation allows for decisive action, whereas total uncertainty leads to a paralysis that in the wild gets you eaten, which is not good. So this better safe than sorry hardwiring means we are biologically predisposed to prefer a coherent fiction over a chaotic reality. So our brain prefers knowing what's going on. To understand how this narrative drive functions in the modern world, we can look at a certain experiment by this neuroscience, okay? I won't pronounce the name because I will butcher it, I'm sorry. But he calls this phenomenon the interpreter. Okay, so let me explain. Located in the brain's left hemisphere, this mechanism, like the mechanism of the interpreter, acts like a 24/7 internal news commentator. Its sole job is to observe your behaviors, your fluctuating emotions, and the environment around you, okay? And then to weave them into a seamless and logical story for your brain to understand. So it is the voice in your head constantly explaining why you are doing what you are doing, even when the real reason is hidden. So they did this whole experience, and the most jarring evidence for this interpreter comes from this split brain experiments they did, which involve patients whose corpus callosum, the bridge connecting the two halves of the brain, so the two hemispheres, had been severed. In a classic setup, researchers would show a command like walk to the people, exclusively to the patient's right hemisphere. And since the right brain controls movement but lacks speech, the patient would stand up and begin to walk. It would just do what it was told to do, okay? So the person, I mean. However, the left hemisphere, where the interpreter and speech centers live, had no idea the sign even existed. The left side of the brain didn't know what was going on, okay? So when these patients were asked why they were walking, they didn't know, they couldn't know because the left brain wasn't involved, you know what I mean? But the left brain didn't admit ignorance. Instead, the interpreter in the left brain instantly invented a logical justification. And then they said, I just wanted to get a drink. So the patient wasn't lying on purpose. Their brain had genuinely convinced them that this fabricated reason was the absolute truth, which is kind of scary in my opinion. So this narrative illusion suggests that we aren't always the rational, conscious actors we think we are. Instead, we often act on subconscious impulses, and our inner storyteller simply backfills the script to make us feel like we are in control, to make us feel more safe. We aren't just the protagonists of our lives, we are also the creative writers, so to speak, and we constantly edit our reality to avoid the predator of the unknown, because our brain hates that. So the brain would rather believe a painful lie than sit with an uncertain truth. That also means that if you feel bad, the interpreter must find a victim or a villain to explain your feelings, to make sense of those feelings. It then could point at your partner or your job or your own reflection even and say something like, there, that's why you feel this way. Just to come up with an explanation, even if it's not even remotely true, okay? Just to keep itself calm, so to speak. It gives you a script, so you don't have to sit in the chaos of a nameless feeling. Another reason feelings feel like facts and nothing but the truth is because they are undeniably physical. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio explores this through his theory of the so-called somatic markers, which suggests that emotions are deeply rooted in physical signals sent from the body to the brain. So when your heart races and your breath becomes shallow or your muscles tighten, your brain performs a quick bit of internal logic, and it thinks physical sensations this intense don't happen for no reason. Therefore, this must be a crisis. Something bad must be happening right now. So the fundamental glitch in the system, however, is that the body is an imperfect translator, and that's where the whole problem kind of begins. It cannot always distinguish between a present-day predator and, for example, a painful memory, or between a biological stimulant and a genuine threat. So you might experience a profound, quote-unquote, fact of impending doom simply because you consume too much caffeine, or because a sound or a scent even triggered a subconscious association with a past heartbreak. Consciously, you don't understand why you feel this way because the feeling gets triggered in your subconsciousness. In these moments, your body sounds a full-scale alarm, and your mind, doing its best to make sense of the chaos, assumes there must be a fire, even when there's only a flickering shadow. Because we can feel the heat of the emotion in our chests and limbs, we find it nearly impossible to believe the threat isn't real. This becomes dangerous when these emotional facts start actually constructing our reality. Think about it. If you wake up convinced people find you boring, your behavior will follow that script. You'll withdraw from certain social events or avoid eye contact, and maybe even stop sharing your thoughts because your brain thinks better safe than embarrassed. And guess what happens next? People respond to the energy you give off, of course. They pull away because you are the one distancing yourself. You kind of act in a weird way, and before you know it, your isolation feels confirmed. Sociologist Robert K. Merton called this a self-fulfilling prophecy. The feeling wasn't true at the start. It wasn't based on a fact. But because you treated it as a fact, your behavior then made it real. You predicted the outcome and you performed it. You essentially built the cage you already thought you were trapped in. Which is ironic, but if we know this, we can help ourselves to get out of this trap. Philosophers have been thinking about this forever. For example, existentialists like Jean-Paul Sartre. He argued that we are condemned to freedom. We are always choosing, even when it feels like circumstances are forcing us. So when you act as if your feeling of being boring is an objective fact, you're choosing a version of reality that limits you. You're giving your emotions the power to define the world around you instead of using your consciousness to observe it. Even modern psychology supports this. Cognitive behavioral research shows that emotional reasoning, believing your feelings are facts, can warp not just perception, but also social behavior, decision making, and also long-term self-concept. So your brain literally rewires itself around repeated emotional truths, which is why negative self-talk and anxiety are so sticky. And which is also why positive affirmations can help a lot. So the real danger is that your feelings begin scripting your life. You start playing a role written by your emotional impulses instead of the role you actually want to play. And the script feels invisible because it's written deep in our unconscious mind, in our subconscious mind. Like it's just reality until you pause and step back and ask yourself, wait, am I really acting on a truth right now or on a feeling pretending to be truth? Let's take a look at two different thoughts for a last example. Thought 1, I feel anxious, so something bad must be happening. Thought 2, I feel anxious, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything is wrong. I think it's easy to notice the difference. One sentence hands over your power to the feeling. The other acknowledges the feeling but keeps you in the driver's seat. You are no longer the feeling, you are the observer of the feeling. You are the one deciding what it means, or even if it has to mean anything at all. It works the same for physical sensations too. Maybe your chest feels tight, your stomach twists and your heart races. Instead of instantly giving it a story, I'm anxious, something bad is happening, try this. I'm noticing, I am observing a weird sensation in my body right now. That's it, nothing more. Let it pass without adding meaning. It sounds small and even trivial, but in my opinion, it's kind of revolutionary because you are reclaiming your mind from automatic interpretation and you are then stepping off the hamster wheel of emotional reasoning. So, sometimes a feeling is just a feeling. It's not a verdict, it's not a prophecy, and it certainly isn't a fact. You can honor the feeling without letting it dictate your actions. You can respect it without letting it define your reality. And once you do that consistently, something amazing happens. You start seeing your life as a series of choices instead of a series of reactions. You start realizing that reality isn't handed to you by your emotions, it's something you continuously co-create. I'm convinced that we can do this, and I'm convinced that it can help us a lot. Thank you so much for watching, and excuse my accent. Bye!